anyways, we stuck with my color scheme, and we went on, and in the end, they basically sold the movie on the makeup, so I guess it worked out all right. So. Well, all the stages are on film. It's funny, I've read a number of times that even though I did these multiple sculptures, that they weren't used, that they just stuck with one, and that's not the truth. I think the things people just aren't noticing the differences because there was kind of a subtle difference between them. It was a gradual melt throughout the thing, and the initial one was, again, much more, he had more skin on him, and like I said, he had lips, and it was more like his skin was starting to crack, and we also had, a series of different hands for the Melting Man. The first set was this, actually, which is, I think, the only remaining thing from the Incredible Melting Man, and this was like the stage one version of the hands, and to make it practical, we sculpted like a mid-stage hand, and then all this like broken skin and stuff was actually fabricated, built up on that hand, and we put the fingernails on it. Getting to stage two, the fingernails started coming off, and a lot of the skin was gone. And like at stage three, you just saw the veins and the muscles and the kind of bony like part of it, And it was a similar thing on the face. It was, more normal looking human with cracked skin. Then it went to, slightly sagging bits and continued to sag. And at the last stage, right before he melts, it's pretty asymmetrical. One side's much lower, and there's definitely some more like sculpted in drips, and he's lost his eye and his ears and whatever. And, it was actually a big show for us at the time, because of all the stages of Melting Man, and the Sam Gelfman had the bus open, and Nurse Bonnie, the nurse in the beginning who was the first victim. Because she was only going to be dead on the table, we actually took a mold of her head, like we normally do when we're doing appliance makeup, and we just did a very thin plaster cast, and actually I broke half of it off, and then put a fake skull in there, and built up against some gelatin and some things to make the, because you were supposed to see her from one side, and the camera was supposed to come around and see her half eaten. So that was, a lot of the work on that head was actually done by Rob Bottin, who was, like I said, my child protege at the time, and I thought he did a fantastic job, and he went on to be an Oscar-winning effects guy in the future. So. And the Melting Man at one point gets his arm chopped off, and you see the arm on the ground moving around. And what we actually did was very simple. We had a like 4x8 sheet of plywood that looked like whatever the floor was where we were, with a hole cut in it, and we basically just took the Melting Man hand and a sleeve that went on it, and came up through the floor. It was this way. It came up through the floor. I think it may have actually been Rob Bottin's hand, as a matter of fact, in the glove, and through a hole in the set like that, and he's just moving his hand this way and jiggling it around, and it looks like a severed arm that moves. It's like a trick we've used many times for different effects. Melting Man wasn't a big budget film, and in the days of independent filmmaking in the 70s, there was never really a lot of time or a lot of money, for the pre-production part of it or for the filming. I don't remember the exact time frame that we had to pre-production wise and for filming, but no matter how long it takes, it's always like it takes too long for the production point of view. In the end, I think that's one reason we actually simplified the makeup a bit. I didn't do as many layers of gelatin and stuff because it just took more time. And so we ended up basically, I would squirt a bunch of Karo syrup blood and I think it was like Jergens hand lotion and on the top of the mask to make him drip, and then we'd go. So yeah, in the end, I think it was one of the reasons I didn't do a lot of the gelatin buildup and stuff was because it just took more time and they didn't have the time. So I ended up just squirting, Karo syrup blood, a couple different colors, and some Jergens lotion on his foam latex head to have this drippy stuff. And it was very sticky and messy, but drippy. We filmed all over the place, again, as films did at that time, I was pretty much prepared for that. I mean, the problem was, again, it wasn't a big budget film. We didn't have a nice makeup trailer, and I was doing makeups in wherever I could find a place to do it. Sometimes, if the location was nearby, I mean, I made Alex Rebar up in my house a number of times. But I was pretty much prepared for that. That's how films were in those days. There was a number of people on the crew that I'd worked with before on some, independent, low-budget films. Had a certain group of people that kind of traveled around, and I know knew a number of them at the time. It was my first time working with Bill Sachs, and first and last time actually. He was nice enough, and I kind of felt for him in a way too, as I feel for almost any director, because it's such a hard job, especially when you're have time and budget constraints like you do in those days. Alex Rebar, who was the Incredible Melting Man, was one of the biggest prima donnas I've ever worked with. He used to kept telling me that he was a big star in Italy, and I would say, well, you're not in Italy now, and you're in the Incredible Melting Man. So shut up and sit still. And let me put this stuff on you. But I mean, he was all right. Yeah. Well, as I said before, I had a couple of proteges working this. One of them was Rob Bottin. The other was Greg Hannum, both who went on to have very nice careers of their own. And I also had Craig Reardon, who I've known from a very early age, who actually sculpted the hands for the Melting Man. So there was a lot of makeup talent on this B movie. Rob was a kid who contacted me when he was 13 years old and had never done makeup and was interested in it and wanted to learn. And he gave me a drawing that he did of Lon Chaney that I thought was amazing. So I took Rob under my wing, and he used to take the bus out from El Monte to North Hollywood, where I lived at the time, and would spend the weekends at my house, my little apartment basically, and I would teach him stuff I spent the weekend showing him, this is how you sculpt, this is how you make a mold, this is how you apply makeup, and went through the whole thing. And like I said, he took off and started doing his own stuff. Greg had approached me, he had already done some makeups, and he actually showed me makeup that he'd done himself that I thought was very good. And then I showed him how I do things, and I'd worked with Greg and Rob on a number of pictures throughout that time. Yeah, I think